So happy Friday, everybody joining. Good afternoon. Very excited to lead this session today. Maybe you already heard about it, but EPH has partnered up with Highbridge to deliver this amazing free value to you. So thank you again, Christian, Chloe, David, for the opportunity. Today, as said, we're going to cover advanced problem solving. You can also call it how to become a McKinsey consultant in your spare time. And it's great to have you. If you are okay with it, please turn on your camera. It's really good to see you. It changes completely my how I teach, right? When I can see you, I can see your reactions more than just a black screen. And please, let's warm up a little bit using the chat. Can you share where you're connecting from today? Just say hi in the chat so that you have it open. Let's see if it's working for everybody. Hello, Cologne. Hello, Switzerland. Dubai. Hi. Sofia, cool. Münster. UK, Düsseldorf, Belgrade, Netherlands, Wiesbaden. Great. Düsseldorf. Okay, hope you get better, Jose. Karlsruhe. Waldürn. Oh, cool. Okay, lots of places. It's great. São Paulo. Olá, bom dia. So again, please just feel free to use the chat, okay? And every time you have a comment or a question, I'll check it out periodically so that you can talk to me as well. If you want to participate with voice, just please raise your hand and I will pass the word to you, okay? Goals for today. Today, we want to show how problem solving is important and to boost your problem solving skills, okay? You're most likely not using those thinking tools at their full potential. And in fact, you might be even wasting a lot of value for your organization and for yourself because you're not doing so. But glad that you're here today. We're here to help. And we will show you that while the ideas might look and sound simple, getting really good at it takes work, okay? And remember, if it was easy to master, consulting firms wouldn't be a thing. We know that. The second objective for today is to present you a transformative offer. If you like what you're learning here, I can already tell you that's about 2.5% of the offer. And if you find this valuable, you want to learn more. So I invite you to stay and hear about it as well. And where are my manners? First, let me introduce myself. I'm Flavio Soriano. Thank you, Christian, for having me. I'm from Brazil, and I have background in business and management. And I've worked about for 5 years in consulting, including companies such as Arthur D. Little and McKinsey in 4 countries. And I've been in Germany, in Berlin, since 2018. I started Highbridge in 2020 because I wanted to offer high quality content that respects people's intelligence. And I could have never done this alone. That's why I recruited a faculty of over 60, now it's 60 plus ex-McKinsey, Bain, and BCG consultants with about 300 years of accumulated project experience with top management and government. Not everybody fits on the page, but yes, this is a glimpse of our faculty that helps us. And we have upskilled people in leading organizations and received great feedback. And this is a content that has been tested over and over again with different crowds. I'm very happy to present it today. If you have questions anytime, again, chat or raise your hand. I'll stop and try as much as possible to answer everything. Now, let's imagine we are hopping on a plane to the country of Valeristan. Don't worry, I got your visa, I got your business class seats. And stay alert because I have some questions for you. We're visiting Aquaviva. Aquaviva is a busy beverage company, and you'll sense a lot of excitement there because they are launching an innovative advertising campaign in South Valeristan. This campaign has been developed over months, and they blend the South Valeristan folklore with Aquaviva's modern branding. But after launching their ad campaign, Aquaviva faces a social media storm, you know, they're accusing Aquaviva of cultural insensitivity. Question for you, if leading that firm, what would you do? Tell me in the chat. Yes, you. Tell me what would be your reaction or your first, let's say, instinct here. Apologize for hurting sentiments. Communicate. Do damage control. Pull the ad until root cause discovered. Very interesting. Okay, immediate action followed by investigation. Try to understand why they feel like that. Reaching out to understand. Okay, so I see a lot of investigation, research. Check who has complained, yes, and find out what sentiments were hurt and from whom. Understand what's the problem. I think that's a very good idea as well. Please keep sending the ideas. They are very good. And well, back to the story. Aquaviva's marketing team is in panic. And they are debating whether to withdraw the campaign due to the risk of the severe brand damage, right? But an experienced consultant, Isabella, an ex-strategy consultant, experienced marketing analyst and ex-strategy consultant, stands up and says, hey, folks, wait, the campaign might still work. To understand more, let's do some research. And I have some ideas, right? Let's use those totems we have to gather some feedback. For instance, reactions. We can do this in one day. And most of the feedback is surprisingly positive. Respondents actually like the new take on details. Second, let's do a bit of analysis of who is complaining, like you said, right? They find out that the complainers are mostly urban millennials, but the main consumers were older people in suburban areas. They are just less active on social media platforms. And third, talking to retailers showed that in some areas, the controversy actually increased curiosity and sales. So with this information at hand, Aquaviva could adjust the strategy. And instead of stopping the campaign, Aquaviva decided to expand it. And they started to collaborate with local artists to embed their views and create region-specific advertisement. The outcome. So Aquaviva not only grew in the South Western market, but they also set new standards for brand adaptability and cultural collaboration. And as we take off and leave the country, let's think about it. What takeaway can you take from this story? Yes, Misha, we just had that case where Apple also pulled an advertisement about the iPad. But yeah, takeaways. What can you, how to synthesize a lesson here? Data-driven decision. What else? Understand before acting. Yes, immediate reactions can be misleading, right? Break down the issues, categorize and isolate whenever possible. Great. Yes. Anyone else? It's an opportunity to practice synthesis, right? In just a few words. Bad news is not always bad news. Yeah. Understand before to understand. Didn't get this one. Don't panic. Research before you place the ad. Of course, yes. Maybe you can do it preemptively, right? Prevent before, like, not remediate. Proactive engagement. Not every complaint is a direction. Yeah, the cliche of turning opportunity to problem into opportunity. Great. Understand to be understood. Okay, very good. So I agree with all of what you said, right? So success often comes from problem solving, a calm, methodical approach with focus on data, on facts, and avoid preventing jumping to solutions, right, or to conclusions. But before we continue, let me then define a bit better what we mean by problem solving, because more experienced people, usually they are very picky with words, right? They ensure everybody understands the same way, because misunderstandings have caused a lot of problems in the past. And junior people, maybe they assume that everybody has the same dictionary, and often they get into trouble for that. But let's define first what we mean by problem solving. We mean a skill set, right, to handle complex issues, right? It is for complexity, for uncertainty, from non-routine. Non-routine doesn't mean infrequent, okay? Depending on your job, this might be very common daily tasks, right? For instance, routine tasks could be like handling a customer complaint, a very common thing, or deciding like how to arrange the office. You might need not problem-solving method for that. But for solving mysteries, like why customers are leaving, or managing big changes, for instance, let's change the employee benefits or something big about our product, maybe you require and you should use problem-solving skills. Okay, that's what we mean here by problem solving. And as already said, mentioned by one of you, it's all about opportunities as well. Okay, so when we say problems, you can hear opportunities the same way, right? It's about closing a gap. You have a goal and a current situation. Depending if you're looking from one angle or the other, it might be a problem for you or an opportunity for you. So think of the two sides of the same coin. Today, we will learn about the hybrid problem-solving method, how to think successfully. And don't worry if you don't grasp every single thing. I have to move fast to cover it. But learning problem-solving takes time and practice, right? So the more you practice, the better you get. Let's go. We have 10 steps in our problem-solving methodology. It's a bit different than McKinsey's 7 steps. We use 10 steps because for clarity, right? It's more thorough as well. And our focus is to make it easy to understand each one. First step, definition, right? We define problems or opportunities. This is vital. Everybody agrees, but so many projects are delayed and fail when this step is not done well. Second, structuring. We break down things into understandable, manageable parts, and this helps make complexity like easy to handle, or easier to handle at least. Then things starts to get interesting because we need to make choices. We have to prioritize. And since we are investigating a problem, we have to understand the root causes of the problem, right? And focus on the most likely ones, and then develop a storyline that will guide the investigation. I'll go deeper there. Fourth, we collect the data to check our hypothesis. Are we correct or incorrect? Should we reject the hypothesis or just refine it? And here, all kinds of data, like quantitative and qualitative data. 5, diagnostic analysis, right? So essentially, we have the data, let's do the tests and confirm or not the hypothesis we had. These 5 first steps are focused on the diagnosis, or also it's called the foundation of a project, okay? Continuing on, step number 6, we brainstorm solutions for the root causes and opportunities we've identified, right? After we confirm the root cause, now what can we do about it? We structure it again, and we create a storyline again for what we aim to achieve. Then we gather the data, this time to validate the initiatives. And this can be the same or different data, right? Different data than before. But we are using it to confirm our proposed solutions. Essentially, if we do this, that is going to happen. And the numbers show it, right? And that's the analysis. Once again, we do these predictive models, and this helps us with the outcomes, like financial impact. How much money is this going to generate? Prioritization, again, is key. 9, we choose, again, the effective initiatives. And 10, we summarize to present our findings to the decision makers or to the forums, whether investors, internal stakeholders, clients, right? And this is the design phase of the project, right? The last 5 steps. So who invented this in the first place? Who invented the problem-solving method? Nobody can claim that they invented it. The root is on the scientific method combined with creative thinking and, of course, a lot of teamwork. And consulting firms, because they are in the business of solving problems, they have refined and perfected it a lot, and they use it over and over again. So it's a time-tested method to solve complex issues. Flavio, is it linear like that? Of course not, right? Understanding the problem solving is more like navigating a zigzag path than a straight line. Often you need to revisit earlier stages, and actually the most successful problem solvers, they go back So like, oh, let's take a look at a problem definition again and update it. Or let's break it down, our structure down again because we learn new things. The most important iterative loops here are the analysis and then the hypothesis, right? You discover something and then you update your beliefs and then you go for data again and keep going in this cycle, right? More on that later. So now you're familiar with the 10 steps. I wish you all the success in solving your challenges, but we're not done yet. We will learn more about the steps. So please buckle up. As I said, I have to cover a lot. And I need you to tell me if I'm going too fast, right? So please let me know how the speed is going. Because of time, I'll be able to focus more on just the first 3 steps, which are all very important, right? They set you up for success. We'll touch base on steps 4 and 5, and steps 6 to 10. I cannot deep dive today, but there are some analogies, right? So you see that there is a bit of connection between both. Like, for instance, data collection. Now, to benefit from this workshop the most, I need you to think about a work-related problem you have, right? Something professional that will be more helpful. And it's good that it's not so easy to diagnose, right? So something that you need to solve or you want to solve, it's in your area, it's connected to the main goals that you want to achieve, so it's important. It's stopping or slowing you down or your area or your company. It's unsolved or poorly solved, and it will probably involve multiple stakeholders, right? If all of the above is true. Okay, so think about it. I'll give you a few seconds. Now, using the power of synthesis, can you tell me in the chat? No naming, no names, nothing at all. Just can you tell me in one sentence, what problem do you wish to solve, right? I hope you have some, because otherwise you wouldn't need to be here, right? To synthesize it in one sentence. You might use it later on for different steps. Oh, very good. 2 words, super synthetic. Thank you, Jörg. Reversing deforestation. Yes, that's a big one. Definitely not so easy to diagnose. Unsolved, poorly solved. Peter, getting customers to buy EVs, electric vehicles. Yeah, Wiebke, resistance in projects. I agree. Those are difficult to pinpoint exactly what's happening, right? So upfront might be more than one cause. Government policy implementation, super complex. Missing the culture of selling an entire business from leadership to sales team. Great. Thank you so much for sharing. I have to move on because of time, but please feel free to synthesize your problem and we'll get back to that. So the first one, definition. Let's go. Well, defining a problem is about describing it in the pertinent dimensions, what matters. It's because it's often unclear, even to us, what are all the aspects of the problem, not to mention others, like potential team misalignments. It's so easy to have a misunderstanding or different conceptions of what really is the problem and how to call it. And how do we do it? Well, we use a template. That's an easy one, this one, relatively easy. And we get it on paper very quickly. This is what we do in consulting projects, and I do recommend you to put it on paper or on the screen as fast as possible to discuss it. And writing a problem definition is iterative. You may need to revise it many times, the specific wording, and also as we saw, as you discover new information. Now, does it mean that we should start, after defining the problem, we should start breaking it down, structuring it to solve it? What do you think? We put it on paper. Everybody agrees that's the problem. Is it time to go to step number 2? What do you think? I see some scratching heads and so on. Well, I can just give you one advice that not yet, right? Because you have to choose your problems carefully. Once they are defined, it's important to think about those questions. Is it worth solving this problem at all? Like, what happens if it remains unsolved? Right? If we have a few complaints, but they are very, let's say, sporadic and a small, very small part of our customer base, right? Is it worth like getting to change things and embarking on a journey? So this is one example. How much effort and resources do we estimate to solve it? Now that it's on paper, we can discuss about it. Like, let's discuss what would it take to solve it, right? How much resource? Is there a better resource allocation? Sometimes or often there is. Is it a new or old problem? And if old, what were the key barriers to solving it? Why is it still unsolved? Maybe there is a solution already and it's just waiting for implementation, and you don't want to do the same project again, which happens sometimes incredibly, right? You get to the same solution that people already got before you. Or is the problem actually many unrelated or related problems? So it's time to also disaggregate and see like, okay, we're talking about two different things that are combined here. Okay, so in short, pick your battles and don't jump into, of course, every single one after defining it. Then if I may, let me walk you through a little bit the template of a problem definition. Okay, when solving a problem, first consider the context, the situation, right? A clear snapshot, what is happening, so everybody's on the same page. It's just a brief synthesis of the context. And then we go for the complication, which highlights what is the pressing issue, what happened that instigated and motivated the project. Why do we have to address it right now? And consultants love writing down situation and complication. They do it already in the project proposals. For instance, BCG has an example for us here in a public project. It's available online if you're interested, but it's highlighting Sweden's challenges and complication. Right, you can see here. You don't need to read everything. It's just to show you how it looks like, right? It's simple, very simple page. Now, after the situation and complication, we have a bunch of other dimensions that I'm going to show to you here. I can cover it quickly so that we can move on. The question, we might have two types, the diagnosis question and the design question, right? What's happening and what to do about it. Okay? One is the why, the other one is the what next, right? And here we try to use this SMART principles, so they are very well defined, they are specific, they are measurable, they are actionable and relevant, time-bound, all those things that you probably heard about. Then we have the success criteria, where we can put a bit more in detail what will mean success for that particular problem to be solved. The scope and constraints, what can we touch, what can we not touch? Stakeholders, who is involved, who will be implicated, and benchmarking. We like at Highbridge to add that to the problem statement. That's not the usual, but we like it because a lot of times, very often, the problem has been already solved for you by someone else somewhere. So a little bit of research goes a long way, right? And even asking AI and asking it for advice, it can bring up relevant ideas for you. By the way, AI helps us a lot in many stages of problem solving. I'm going to mention that as well. But it doesn't do it for you yet completely. Okay. Now that you know those dimensions, let me ask you, how well defined is the problem you thought about? Is it covering the dimensions that we just projected, right? Those ones, or not yet? The faster you type, the faster we move on. Clearly not. Okay, not a problem. Now there's at least some suggestions. Anyone else? Not entirely. Partially. Okay. So again, like, please feel free to participate. It's helpful also to share your experiences and also see where the group stands. I hope you can also share in the chat. Yes, so it's not only important to define it well, but write it down, okay? Because it's not only for you. Normally, you're solving a problem in teams, or at least you want to give visibility to others. when you're solving a problem. Yeah, the problem is that the dimensions are not independent from each other. Yes, you have a little bit of success criteria in the question, right? You might have a little bit of scope and constraints in the complication, but I can tell you that it's even if they overlap a little bit, it's very helpful. Okay, let me give you an example of a problem definition. And this one is personal because my younger sister is an architect in Rio, Brazil, and she wanted to expand the market for interior design. So offering interior design services to lower income families in Brazil. And when she mentioned that, I almost started giving her advice, right? Like randomly, like, oh, you should make it cheaper because of this, what you can do, and have you thought about this, and so on. It's the advice monster that we all have in ourselves, right? But then I remembered, well, wait a second. I teach problem-solving methodology. So instead of just jumping into the conclusion, maybe I can explore in a structured way and consider all the factors that are in play here. And that's what we did. I hopped on a call with my sister and I interviewed her. And we came up with this. I will not read everything to you, but you can check it out and have an example of what it would look like, right? I will read just the questions, right? Why are the Brazilian lower income families not seeking and purchasing interior design services? And then a secondary question is like, what makes a project expensive for them, right? Because price is, of course, a very big issue. We know that from our experience. And the design questions is how to create an attractive interior design offering for lower income families that is 50 to 70% cheaper, but also high quality. And how to make the segment represent 50% of Amanda's clients, my sister, by the end of 2024. Okay, so why 50 to 70%? Well, this is based on the experience, on a bit of client reaction. So you can already, maybe even before you start the exploration, you can put a hypothesis there that this is a good, let's say, target, right? You might find out that it's a bad target later on. It's okay, but that's our initial thought. Okay, now, when you're defining a problem, sometimes it's good to take a look at the data, but very briefly, like just to have an idea and to learn a bit more, or even have like conversations, of course, right? Data visualization helps because not to deep dive into analysis at this stage, but to gain more insight around the context, so to answer the problem definition. All right, so if you're still with me, let's just wrap up this one. The advice is slow down, especially in the beginning of problem solving, because we always have stress and pressure, and this can hinder the early stages of problem solving. So taking the time to define problems well saves 10 times more time later on. So avoid rushing, bring others on board, right? Always like treat your stakeholders as partners, bring your internal colleagues and sometimes even your external clients in this process. So everybody's involved since the start. Be optimistic. Sometimes we're solving difficult, daunting problems, but one step at a time, right? Maybe you cannot solve it completely, but you still can solve it partially and add value. So having this can-do attitude. Be ready to shatter beliefs, right? Challenge the assumptions, because a lot of issues are misdiagnosed and the world is changing fast. So maybe a root cause that was true 5 years ago is not true anymore for the same problem. And we have to revisit things and break some beliefs, right? So stay curious and skeptical and revisit throughout the projects, right? Once again, I often find it super beneficial to check the problem statement periodically, 3 weeks after the project starts, 6 weeks, and so on, because this helps avoiding scope creep, like changing expanding the scope, changing focus, and losing sight of the target and the question we set out to answer. Great. How is the speed? Is it okay? Can you tell me in the chat? Okay, speed? Too slow? Too fast? It's fine. Okay, thank you so much. Great. So now let's talk about my favorite topic, which is structuring. What is it about? Well, It's about disaggregating. That's the keyword, right? Complex problems into distinct components, facilitating the formulation and dissection of hypotheses. We don't structure just for the sake of breaking things down. We do it for a purpose, which is to create and organize your hypotheses, which are the things you can take action on, right? You can explore. Why do we do it? Because complex, non-routine problems, they often resist straightforward understanding and resolution. We know that yes, you have to approach things. Sometimes it's too much information, too messy and tangled in order for you to even talk about it with someone. And how do we do it? We segment problems into specific buckets, right? Such as focus areas, categories, drivers, structures. They can look very differently. These are, let's say, 3 shapes they can manifest themselves into. For instance, trees, very common. Then mind maps. You can go all directions. It doesn't matter. You can do it in a mural. And also indented paragraphs are structures, of course, right? Any Word document or contract and so on. And legal documents, they can have this dot dash structure as well. Now, you probably heard a few things and maybe you use structuring already on a daily basis, but then I will focus on 6 things that you probably didn't know about problem structuring. Let's focus on those less known aspects so that you learn a few more things. So the first one, consultants use that a lot, is that you can have a day 1 answer, right? Even with just like in the very beginning of your exploration, you can already have a hypothesis. In daily life, right, we already use the hypothesis-driven approach. For instance, if you lose your keys and you want to find them, then we naturally prioritize places where they could be first. Maybe a drawer, maybe a pocket of a jacket, and so on. You wouldn't look for it in the shower, unless you came home really drunk last night. But as humans, we already have the hypothesis-driven approach. So we already look, we have a solution in your mind and we pursue it, right? And that's what we often don't do in business, which should be always the case, right? Given the time constraints. So you must always be oriented towards a destination. That's your hypothesis, right? This guides you and prevents you from getting lost in irrelevant data. And now there's too much data everywhere. There's too much information. For instance, if I ask one of my associates to do interviews with 20 people, they will all tell different things and give a lot of interesting information. They will come back to me and they will report on a million different things they found out. But if I give them a clear hypothesis to test, they focus and they only filter those things. It's very different, right? And they ignore the irrelevant data. And it's normal if your hypothesis is wrong. Like that's the game, right? That's what Christopher Columbus did in 1492 when he revised his plans to get to India. Now, the second thing I want to tell you is that just to distinguish, right? Problem trees are often confused with solution trees and vice versa. Like you have to think about what type of tree are you making? And there are many different kinds, right? So you can do a structure or tree that is a topic tree, right? Focus on the problems, on the issue, right? For instance, I am losing money, and then you list all the factors that you can control and you cannot control, right? I'm here on the top. And you can have a solution tree where you want to solve it already, like how to accumulate more money, right? And spend less, earn more. And this tree can be written in topics, questions, or hypothesis formats, right? You're free to decide whatever makes more sense and feels more natural to you, right? If you have very little time, I go for usually to the topics. I just break down the keywords. And if we have more time, if you want to make it more understandable, you can write a full hypothesis as well. Let's see an example so that it doesn't get so fluffy and difficult to visualize. Back to our project on expanding the market for interior design. So with my sister on the phone, I also interviewed her and we broke down this question. Why are low-income families not seeking and purchasing interior design services? And we came up with this hypothesis, many more than I initially thought, right? They're not aware of it. They find it expensive compared to the value. They don't trust service providers. That's another one. They believe they have the skills to do a good job themselves, and they don't have access to financing tools, right? We expanded a lot more. And we went to the second level, right? I'll not read everything, but for instance, in the awareness part, of course, maybe they don't know what interior design is or how the service works, right? For instance, in the expensive bucket, we listed what is value in the end of the day of interior design, right? It's more than there's the surface value, because it's aesthetics and functionality, okay, ergonomics and comfort, but also self-expression and belonging, right? Create an environment that you feel good and belong in it, and so on, right? And you have here other, the service providers is very interesting because lower income families, they use it to buy products, which they can see and touch, and they know what they're getting. But if you pay for a service, it's intangible. You really don't know what's gonna be in the end. And that uncertainty makes them very anxious about spending money, right? And financing tools is also important and everything, right? So consultants love buckets so much that these BCG consultants literally put buckets on their presentation and to check how many, like it was a project for a public sector client in Dallas, right? To get rid or decrease the population of stray dogs, right? And they did the full analysis. Is a very interesting case. It's also available online. Next, you must only use MISI breakdowns. Maybe you heard about this concept, but let's review it. MISI stands for mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, right? And here this picture represents it, because being collectively exhaustive means that we cover all the potential space, whether the problem or solution space. And being mutually exclusive means that the factors don't overlap and they are not influencing too much, or they are interdependent, right? So we try to make them as clear and clean as possible and separated. I often use the example of drugs, medicine, right? So when you take a pill, you want it to act on a specific thing and be mutually exclusive and not cause any collateral effects, right? Essentially, this is, when we have something that is not mutually exclusive, then it usually causes collateral effects. You have to consider many other implications. And there's a technique to break things down in a MISI way, right? In Highbridge, we developed this one called photo and film, quantitative and qualitative. Again, it's okay if we don't have time to go super deep into each one here, but in summary, we have breakdowns that are photos because everything pretty much happens at the same time. There's no sequence, and film where there's a sequence and a time component, right? And of course, we have quantitative and qualitative, which you understand intuitively as well, right? Let me give you a couple of examples. Quantitative photo is a mathematical breakdown, right? If things are mathematical and they add up, or you can subtract, multiply, and so on, then they are MISI, right? They don't overlap. They are separate categories, and they are exhaustive if you add all the elements. They can get very complex. This is, for instance, a ROI analysis, right? In a consulting project to compare different years, right? And this helps understand where the problem is. And another example is the qualitative photo, let's say drivers, right? For instance, what factors affect the profitability of a coffee shop? And here I'm mentioning a few things. You might seem familiar for some of you, right? The Porter 5 forces. And here it's, of course, there's the other bucket as well, because other means that everything else goes there, and it makes it collectively exhaustive as well. Okay? You can put these smaller factors. Some people ask me, Flavio, if it's five forces, where's the fifth? I disagree a bit with Porter. I put client bargain power and alternatives together here in client's power, right? Because having alternative is having power. So for me, it's more like 4 forces. Fourth, you must always try to slice it in different ways. And this is very insightful because if you break things down differently, you have different types of insights. For instance, increasing your salary, you can increase your hours worked or your salary per hour. Those are quantitative factors, but you can also think about drivers, external factors, personal factors, and then break it down in other insights. And those two together, they help you, right, have a better picture. So often I ask my team to break down individually so that we see what everybody put in their first order, first level. And we learn with that. This one is very interesting as well. 5, you may not have a top-down framework. Oftentimes we're facing different new problems and we don't know the recipe to break it down, right? And then what do we do? Well, here's how we approach it. So we have the method of order first. If you know a framework that you can use it, for instance, market entry or due diligence, right? You already know what are the categories. Then you can use that and brainstorm hypotheses based on that. But in other cases, for instance, me and my sister, we didn't have a framework for why are people not buying interior design projects. So we had the hypothesis and then we aggregated them in areas. And this helped us have more hypotheses. But we started with the chaos first, right? Just the brainstorming. So when unsure about what is the breakdown, that's the best way to do it. And here AI helps a lot because if you give ChatGPT a problem, it will give you ideas. This is for sure probably one of the best applications, right? ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude, whatever model you use. And finally, if you're not iterating your structure, you're failing to learn, right? You have to revisit, update it, and make it visible. If you have an office, put it on the whiteboard so that people can see the structures when they go to grab a coffee, when everybody like in the team room is there. Like it makes it very, it's alive, essentially. Okay, and also it's a team sport. Structuring effectively is a collaboration, it's not a solo endeavor. So I would recommend you to not try to be the hero and figure it out. Show your structure, show your output and ask for feedback. What am I forgetting? What else? How else can we look at this? And so on. All right, let me stop for a bit of questions. Anyone has a question, please do raise your hand or use the chat. Frank has a question. Okay. Hard problems mostly involve human emotions. Yes, structuring such problems is often difficult. As the analyzer, you are often part of the problem. True. Reading and understanding emotions from others are also distorted through the prism of your own emotions. How does your framework help in this context? Very, very interesting question, Frank. I would say it's definitely part of problem solving to acknowledge emotions and to acknowledge reactions, right? And it's, of course, it's very important to acknowledge your bias. I would say bias is better, like the best way to fight bias is to have diversity, right? And awareness. So you have to be aware that you have biases, if possible, aware of what your biases are. This is part of like self-knowledge, self-awareness, and including other perspectives. And this is the teamwork part, because biases, they cancel each other out, right? Very roughly, quote unquote. And it helps you get a better answer. And ideally, have like the diversity that you have to have is representative of your stakeholders group, right? So have in the room people that are representative of, for instance, your customer base. If you have like a female or a mixed customer base and in the board, there's only male participants, right? This is a problem of diversity because they will not take into account or acknowledge the very big part of the client, right? Now, and yeah, and emotions, I think the best way to treat emotions is to acknowledge them, try to understand them, but also try to manage. It's super important that we manage the emotions and we try to see past the emotions. They always play a role because we're all human, but we also need to be oriented towards logic and facts and data to make the best decisions. So I hope I could answer, but it's indeed a very, very hard question. Thank you so much, Frank. Christian, brainstorming versus order first. What type of problem fit better to each of them? Good question. I would say, for instance, if you're doing a cash flow structure, right? So you want to understand like, oh, our cash flow is dropping. That's a very known formula, right? You have cash flow from operations, from investment, and from financing. This is a framework that you can break down, and you can already like put hypotheses there and look for the data, right? Whereas if you have a very difficult, not difficult, but unknown problem, then it's better to brainstorm, right? So if you are trying to investigate, for instance, how, in which AI company you should invest, right? And buy stocks of, then maybe like this is a new area and it has a lot of factors that we still don't have frameworks for. Very good question. Do you use quantitative trees? Yes. Sometimes the whole tree is made of quantitative photo, right? And that's it. Okay, so I have to keep going because of time. Thank you for the questions. Let's talk briefly about hypothesis, prioritization, and storyline. Once you already define a problem, structured it, then you have to create a hypothesis, because that's why we structure things. And the storyline is a tool. And how to prioritize? Well, you all heard about the Pareto or 80-20 rule. We have to focus on the biggest impact, right? So the 20% that gives 80% of the impact. It's not always 80-20, it's just an expression or one example. It could be 70-20 or 80-10, right? Quantitatively. They don't have to add up to 100. This is a misconception that even ChatGPT will get wrong. You don't add up the two numbers of a axis, right? This 80 and this 20 is just a coincidence that it's 100%, but it doesn't need to be. Now, prioritizing my sister's project was all about common sense, right? And her expertise. And then we decided to go deeper into awareness, price, and financing. And the investigations is ongoing, right? So not yet concluded in that regard. One tool you can use to prioritize, and you probably heard this, is a 2x2 matrix, right? It's a very simple two-dimensional where you define what are the important dimensions. Is it cost or investment? Is it easy or easy to implement, or speed, right? Or what is it? Alignment with the values of the company, right? And then you can put the things on a relative, let's say, order. I usually like to order things in one dimension and then the other dimension, and then I can put this on the matrix. We don't have time for that, unfortunately. I wanted to ask you what's your favorite takeaway so far. But since time is very short, let's move on. Storylines are very important, right? They are a superpower because they are your tool to manipulate, in the good sense, manipulate a series of hypotheses and convey that to other people, right? In what you believe, because you're often the hypothesis, you have more than one, and often they are connected. If you don't do it, in McKinsey, we have a term for it. It's called the APK, or Anxious Parade of Knowledge. So essentially a style of presentation that probably everybody already sat through, which you have very detailed results, a lot of data that does not form a story. There's no story, right? And often leads to anxiety because the audience is just bombarded with a lot of data, but they cannot connect the dots, okay? And the challenge is to connect the dots for the audience. Here is, in my opinion, the best representation of that, right? You're connecting your problem definition, SCQ, situation, complication, question, so the key parts of the problem definition, with your answer, whether it's a recommendation, whether it's a conclusion, then why, the partial conclusions, and the supporting facts. Right? If I rearrange my sister's hypothesis in this format, this is how it looks like, right? Lower income families don't hire interior design for the lack of awareness and affordability, right? They don't know what it is, they don't know how this works, and they don't know where to look for. The price is perceived as too high, there's no credit available, we must explore ways to increase awareness and decrease costs and the prices, right? This would be a storyline of what we just did. And to prove each point, we use often slides, right? That's our winning format. And we can draft so-called ghost slides in order to represent the data that we want to see. So ghost slides in consulting are very useful, or dummy slides, or any other name, blank slides, right? Because I want to show data that looks like this, and then you look for it. This is very powerful, and we teach that at Highbridge, and it's very time effective. Okay. Now, just to give you an overview of what we did, we structured the problem. We prioritized hypotheses. We wrote a storyline draft, right? And drafted a bit ghost slides. And this gives us the work plan, what we have to work on, right? This normally is a sprint. You spend 1 week or 2 or 3 weeks in a sprint going through all the data and the analysis, and then you have to reconvene and with your team, and then rediscuss where what to change, what are the hypotheses that we confirmed and not, and create a new sprint. Okay, just like software developers do, like consultants also do that since a very long time. Even before they spoke about sprints and agile, consultants were already using those techniques. Then we have, of course, briefly, as I mentioned, data collection, right? And in the data collection, your objective is to prove your story, because it's a lot of hypotheses, right? And you want to transform premises into facts. So we joke that a premises idea or dream is to become a fact. And that's it, okay? So things you experience, things you heard, things you can imagine, those are not facts yet. And with the facts or the data, at least, you can do the diagnostic analysis. There's a whole world about this. I can't really even scratch the surface with you, right? All the analyses that are possible. Luckily, AI is helping with some of them, not all of them, but you need to know what you look for. AI generally doesn't do the work. Okay, so to summarize, it's iterative. You go through cycles, and the 10 steps, they can really help you solve complex problems better and capture more value. Mindsets are also important, right? So far, we saw skills. This is a skill, but the mindset is as important, right? The strongest problem solvers, they have the growth mindset, they have resilience, and they have teamwork skills, right? But is that enough? Maybe not, right? I quote, I will naturally learn how to get better problem solving over time. Unfortunately, that's not what we observe in experience, like in practice, right? It's the experience paradox, right? Like you specialize, but it might limit your ability to tackle novel, non-routine problems, right? And you need to rely less on your experience, especially in a fast-changing world like today, and more on the method, right? And having structure. And with that, I end, and I wanted to thank you for your attention. If you can stay 3 more minutes, I will explain to you what is the offer that we have here, the Business Excellence Bootcamp. It's a combination of all the best fundamental skills that make those leading consulting firms millions and millions of dollars, right? So we have 8 workshops live, right? Structured problem solving, logical storytelling, amazing slides, flawless communication, stakeholders management, high performance mindsets, and analysis and synthesis, right? And they take place over Fridays. So today we saw a little bit, as I said, 2.5% of what the bootcamp offers on problem solving. That's the backbone. And then we deep dive into different skills, okay? And we have had lots of students. This is one case of one company that sends us associates, right, and managers to upskill. And we've seen that their level of confidence in this methodology that we've seen here has skyrocketed, right? So it's really, really useful. If you're curious to know more, you can talk to us, right? And I have a special